Dorothy was born into a family of journalists in 1897. After moving to San Francisco from New York City, the family settled into an upper-scale lifestyle. That is until the Great San Francisco earthquake of 1906. While the family survived, Dorothy's father, John, lost his job, and the family was forced to move to the south side of Chicago in a tenant apartment building. As Dorothy watched her now unemployed father, she began to notice the shame that he felt as his perceived failure, and it was something that Dorothy would never forget. It was during this time that Dorothy became an avid reader. Any book she could get her hands on, she would read, and many of these books began to stir her consciousness. One book in particular had both an immediate and a lasting effect on young Dorothy's life. It was Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. Living in Chicago, relatively close to the very streets written about in the book, Dorothy began to travel those roads, observing the people and journeying in the neighborhoods that most people would avoid. A few years later, Dorothy was accepted to the University of Illinois Urbana campus, but would eventually drop out of college, finding that her attention was too greatly pulled elsewhere. Dorothy's love of reading and her devotion to her newly found Catholic faith would eventually lead her to arrest for protesting social injustices multiple times. These arrests would not stop Dorothy. One day, after witnessing a march in Washington, D.C., Dorothy went to pray in the Basilica of the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, asking God to use her gifts and talents to help those less fortunate and to balance the scales of economic equality. Shortly following this prayer, Dorothy met a man that would change her life forever, and that was the answer to her prayers. His name was Peter Marin. Today, our response to the psalm is the Lord hears the cry of the poor. There is no doubt that we have a societal issue with homelessness, unemployment, and underemployment, and the issue is made much worse thanks to the pandemic. So what is our response to the cry of the poor? Well, for our parish, two ministries stand out. We have both the Haiti Ministry and the St. Vincent de Paul Ministry, and our weekly Poor Box. But each of these two ministries deserves to be highlighted. Our sister parish in Haiti Ministry has grown to feed close to 1,000 children and teens each year through the feeding program. And in addition to the feeding program, we have provided financial support to our sister parish to help make their lives a little easier. This ability is only possible thanks to the generosity of the people of St. Isaac Jogues. Our St. Vincent de Paul Ministry serves the poor in our community. Twice each month, they distribute food to 70-plus families, collect monetary and food donations for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and distribute the items collected from our annual Jesse tree. That chance encounter that Dorothy had with Peter Marin would eventually lead her to partnering with Paulist Press to publish the first edition of The Catholic Worker, selling copies of her 8-page first edition for only a penny so that each person could afford it. Within The Catholic Worker, Dorothy drew attention to the plight of the less fortunate and downtrodden through the lens of the Catholic social teachings. She would go on to create an entire organization to help the poor and the needy, with not just meals and financial assistance, but also job training, and most importantly, with dignity and respect. To Dorothy, it didn't matter if you were considered the deserving poor. She accepted those addicted to drugs, alcohol, and those with a criminal past. The Catholic Worker is still published to this day, and the price has not changed. As for Dorothy, she passed away in 1980, but her ministry still continues in her name. And just this past week, the Archdiocese of New York sent 16 boxes of documents off to the Vatican, the close of her investigation for the cause of her sainthood. Servant of God Dorothy Day was a champion of the poor and the disenfranchised, and lived her life as an example of our Catholic social teachings. Each of our parish social ministries is staffed completely by dedicated team of volunteers. They work tirelessly to help those in our own community and our sister parish in Haiti. The Lord hears the cry of the poor. Just like Dorothy Day, these volunteers answer that call. Well, I normally end one of these Advent talks with one line of reflection or some thought-provoking quip. I simply want to end today with two words directly towards our parish community and those many volunteers in our Haiti and St. Vincent de Paul ministries. For all that you do for those in need in our community and around the world, thank you.